You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. My name is Billy Dees, and interviewed today on the studio line is Kat Anderson. Kat, welcome to the program. So glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to it all day.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Me too. Let me tell you a little bit about Kat. Kat Anderson is a retired Air Force veteran, former political commentator. We're going to try to make her a current one. And author of author of paranormal noir fiction. I was going ahead to noir because I'm going to ask you about that because I often hear film noir.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly what that means. Okay. Her debut novel, No Rest for the Wicked, blends mystery, conspiracy, ancient mythology, and the supernatural against the neon-lit backdrop of Las Vegas. Drawing inspiration from her military experience and fascination with the unexplained, Kat explores themes of secrecy, time, mythology, and the human need to uncover hidden truths. She joins us today, as I mentioned, to talk about storytelling, creativity after major life transitions, and the allure of mystery and conspiracy, and her journey from military service to fiction writing. Well, that is an interesting mix. I don't know too many people with a military background that start writing, especially with the supernatural.
Yes.
That's kind of so let's talk about you now. Where are you from?
So I grew up in Minnesota, although I don't know if you could tell. I don't think I have much of the accent. I'm not doing I might have some hot dish later.
Yeah, the Fargo.
Yeah. I haven't been to Minnesota in like 2 decades, but that's where I grew up. And then I joined the service when I had been 18 for 2 months. Mm-hmm. And I went off to the Air Force and bounced around for 20 years all over the country and all over the world, and retired it'll be 5 years ago this November. It doesn't, sometimes it feels like it's been 2 years, and then other times I'm like, I was in the service decades ago. Yeah. It's funny how time works that way.
Well, it sure does.
But we're in Las Vegas now. So we were stationed here about 10 years ago. My daughter was born here, and we fell in love with it. I think a lot of people who aren't from Nevada or Las Vegas think that it's just like what you think of Las Vegas with all the casinos. And it's like, that's really just two streets. Las Vegas and Nevada have a lot more to it. And we just fell in love with it. Oh, good. So that's where I hail from now.
Well, I've been to Henderson and all those places. Yeah. So that's a nice area. I like desert climate.
Yes.
I was down in Florida about a week or two ago, and I didn't like it. The bugs were everywhere, and you simply do not have that out there.
Yes. So, that's true. My husband's actually from Fort Lauderdale, so occasionally we've made he kind of has to drag me to Florida when we go, because I'm like, so let's not go in the spring or summer. I feel like I have to take a shower right after I took a shower.
Right. Yeah. The humidity is one thing. I could handle that. But the plants and all the bugs, no thanks. Why are humans drawn to the paranormal and conspiracies and the unexplained? Is it, I have a little theory about that. I kind of think that, humans are essentially living a lonely existence. We really don't have no matter what you believe, there's not a whole lot of really solid evidence that there's anything else out there. Mm-hmm. And I think the idea that people want to know that there's something more than what's out the front door. How do you feel about that?
I think that's pretty spot on. So, when I growing up, I'm a millennial, so I grew up with the X-Files. So it was very big when I was, a teenager. And then, of course, while I was doing political commentary with the Political Insider, it was when the UFO or UAP hearings in Congress were happening. And so they actually, most of the time I covered defense and economics and education. But, it was going to be a big deal. It was the first time Congress had done it. And so they were like, oh, let's do like a kind of a fluff piece on it. And it ended up exploding. And I ended up kind of like following the culture a bit more. And so getting to know, people who are more ingrained in it was definitely eye-opening. But I think overall, I think paranormal is something that as humans we're drawn to because it balances between that feeling of fear and wonder at the same time. And I think those are, at least on an entertainment side, are things that we, as humans, we kind of like, right? It gets your heart pumping. One of my favorite movies of all time, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Really?
Kind of has that for me anyway. Like there's a little bit of fear, but there's that wonder, like, well, what is this? Like, we don't know what it is. And then with conspiracies, I think, I think it's natural for humans, particularly, well, and maybe I'm biased because I am an American, but I think Americans, we have a deep history of distrusting our institutions. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. No. I think that just like anything, you can have too much of stuff, to include too much distrust. But I think, our founders believe that like that's why you have checks and balances. That's why we have Bill of Rights. We're meant to kind of say like, well, prove it, Missouri, like show me state, like prove it government that this is true or that this is happening. And, particularly when, conspiracy theorists, at least in the last 5 or so years, have had they've kind of been vindicated in some areas. I remember talking to my editor about it, and it wasn't just like the fact that it, the big secret that the government really was investigating unknown aerial phenomenon. I mean, there was all sorts of things that were coming out. You didn't have to necessarily be a UFO fan. There was all sorts of things that like, oh, well, that actually kind of was, there's a little bit of truth there and a little bit of truth there. And so I think, when conspiracy type theories start bubbling up, I think it's natural for us to have a healthy dose of like, well, I wonder where that came from. I wonder what grain of like nugget of truth is beneath that. And so at least from a fiction standpoint, that helps with, wanting to turn the page, right? And find out more.
Well, being in the Air Force, I got to ask, because you brought it up, being in the Air Force, being around other people who are in the Air Force for as long as you were, these UAPs and all of these other things, I'll kind of tip my hat here and say I'm not convinced. But what is your take on what do you think there's? Well, I'll just ask you, what do you think these things are? Do you think there's something extraterrestrial about them?
I don't know. So, full disclosure, as a retired Air Force veteran, I've never seen a UFO. I've never been a part of any UFO programs. My career was not nearly that exciting.
Yeah.
Although I always like to tease. So my husband was stationed before we were married. He was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Okay. It's down the road from me.
Which is like, out in Ohio. There's a lot of conspiracies that surround Wright-Patterson where like, the UFO from Roswell was like transported there under tunnels and is underneath the building. So I always like to tease that he probably knows, but just won't tell me. Yeah. But on a personal side, I mean, I'm not convinced it's extraterrestrial, mainly because I don't think our government's that good at keeping that secret.
No.
I don't buy our government's ability to do that. I do believe that there's things that we can't explain, and I think that that's pretty obvious. And I do think that there are things that the government doesn't tell us because the government lies to us since the beginning of the government. I mean, it's kind of part of military and government. I mean, anybody who's been in the military for an extended period of time knows that there are things that aren't, fully explained to the public for various reasons and not necessarily nefarious. And many times it's just because we overclassify stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm not convinced they're extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
I think it'd be that would be amazing, but I'm not convinced.
I mean, I always have to preface this with saying that I think the only thing that would be more significant than finding life other than ours in space would be finding solid evidence that spiritual forces affect the physical world. I think that would probably be even more astounding. But
oh yeah,
with that, I'm here again. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying proof, empirical proof. And I've heard so much about the aliens. I always joke, if I'm going to believe it now, I got to have one on the podcast. Otherwise, I won't believe it. I think the idea that the government is the arbiter of this information is what I don't understand. If these things really do exist, there's nothing stopping them from landing on the 50-yard line during the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And it's never that. It's always, some mysterious thing. And I honestly don't have any faith in the government. Not that I don't trust them, but I just don't think they're that smart, quite frankly.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
I bet if you took both houses of Congress and asked them to explain E equals MC squared, I would be willing to bet more than half of them couldn't. Yeah. And I don't mean from a physics standpoint, but what does the equation mean? They probably couldn't do it. And these are the people that are keeping all these secrets. No, I'm not buying it. I'm not there. Yeah. And I'll say one more thing about these things. These pilots, and I'm nothing against the Air Force. I'm just throwing this out there. They're in these multi-billion-dollar planes. They can find a basketball under snow on a playground from way up there, tell how much air is in it. But when these things come flying by, they pull out their iPhone. I just don't understand. That's the best way to take a picture of one of these things when you're flying around a $1 billion airplane. Okay. With that being said, what is this noir? I hear film noir, and you do paranormal noir. What is that?
Yeah. So, and I'm like, let me preface with, I'm no expert. When I had written my book and had kind of started sharing chapters with people, it was other people that told me like, oh, this has a very noir like vibe to it. And so, when I think about it, paranormal noir, because I wouldn't classify my book necessarily as horror. Horror, something horror, like that's horror, has a lot of jump out scares and things like that. Mine is a lot more kind of, eerie, and it's kind of slow burn, creepy. And then noir, I think of, I don't know if, and this probably ages me a little bit, but like the Marlowe mysteries, where there are no like 100% good guys. Like, and even your good guy he's definitely got some flaws. Mm-hmm. There are nothing that would be, a deal breaker, because you have to find people likable. You have to have somebody to root for. At least I always think in stories. But it's just a little bit more gritty, right? It's, which is why, like, so my book takes place in Las Vegas, because I think Las Vegas is one of the grittiest places you could come to. If you've only ever come here to go gamble, you probably don't see that much of it. But Las Vegas is one of those cities that you could walk down one street and you're surrounded by luxury. Yeah. And then you turn the corner and it's very gritty. And,
sure.
It's kind of desolate, or it might even be a little lonely and a little desperation there. And so that's how I would describe the noir vibe of my book. It's gritty. Even though that's paranormal, there's the realistic aspect of real life where people are not 100% good or 100% bad.
Yeah, that's a good description. Yeah, these dichotomies exist anymore all over the country. Ohio, one thing Ohio does very well is medicine. Really good here. And, you can be at the Cleveland Clinic or one of these places, and, you make a left turn and you're at one of the premier medical institution culturally places in the world. You make a right turn and you're in hell. Okay. Yeah. It's amazing how those dichotomies exist. Reinventing yourself through creativity. Why did you have to reinvent yourself? What was wrong with the way you were?
Oh, that's such a great question. I mean, absolutely nothing. I think I'm fabulous. Now, I joined, like I said, I joined the service just 2 months after I turned 18.
Yeah.
And, I was young and dumb, I think, like most 18-year-olds. And I don't want to say that joining the military was the wrong decision. Mm-hmm. but it certainly wasn't my top decision. It wasn't like my top choice.
Yeah.
Growing up, I loved stories. I loved reading and I loved writing. I wrote short stories and I wrote screenplays and I wrote just terrible poetry when I was younger. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to write. I wanted to go to college and be a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I had, I'd done a little research to find like a university that had a good creative writing program. I didn't not necessarily exactly this wording, but my family was pretty like, no, you're not doing that. Like, yeah. that is not a solid plan for your future. You're going to join the service and take advantage of the education benefits and everything that the military can offer you. And I certainly did. And I was silly enough to get my civilian education in politics. I'm one of the many out there with a bachelor's degree in political science that does you no good whatsoever. And then went on to get a master's in political management. Also does me no good, but it was free. So that's great. Yeah. And when I retired, I'd spent 20 years in the military. By the time I retired, I was a senior master sergeant. So I was an E8. I wasn't really a big wig, but I made decisions and all of that. And then all of a sudden I'm in my late 30s and I'm on my own and it was great. But then I was like, well, what do I do now? And so I started my own little blog where I wrote about politics because originally I wanted to run for political office, which may still be in my future. We'll see. Yeah. And so it caught the attention of the Political Insider and I got to do political commentary. That's and my awesome. Editor at the time wanted me to write a book about my time in Afghanistan because I deployed quite a bit while I was in the service and got myself a Bronze Star and all that.
Oh, wow.
And so I worked on the book a little bit and I was like, I don't want to. Who wants to read about Afghanistan from yet another veteran of Afghanistan? Like, I don't want to read it and I lived it. So I just kind of started tinkering with short stories that I had thought of on various assignments and things like that and putting it on my website. And people really liked them. They were like, oh, wow, this one was really scary or this one was kind of funny. And I thought, well, maybe I'll write a book, but I'll write a fiction book.
Yeah. And
so kind of reclaiming that part of who I was that I really hadn't touched for 2 decades was quite the process for sure. But we're making it work and I have a book coming out in August. Awesome. So it's very exciting.
It is. We are talking to Kat Anderson. The book is called No Rest for the Wicked. You talk about trauma and loss and how those can help you shape storytelling. And I hear that a lot. I think a lot of times it can help to write about it for some people, not everybody, but for some people they can write about it. They can take those stories and work them into a fiction story. How did that unfold for you?
Yeah, I think, I think any writer probably puts quite a bit of themselves into their writing, even if it's fiction. And so while I haven't had a very paranormal life, I can relate in many respects to some of the characters that I have in my book. And you talk about trauma, and I don't want to, I've been, when you're in the military, especially for 20 years. And I joined before 9/11 happened.
Okay.
And so I know what it was like before 9/11. And then I spent my entire career, during the I call it the forever war. And I deployed in support of it. And I was in when we left Afghanistan.
Okay.
And so everybody processes trauma differently. And even in the service, I think a lot of times military veterans get kind of like slapped with the same sort of, you're all like this, you're this person. But I got to, whether it was on actual deployments or dealing with friends that I had lost either due to wartime injuries or due to suicide, of which I have far too many.
Oh, way up there.
I got to witness a lot of what fear and exhaustion and guilt and loyalty, how that really kind of affects a person. And I think those are characteristics that all humans have, they deal with them, but you see it at I think a much more visceral level in the service. And so for better or for worse, I think it helped me to be able to shape the characters. I think any good book or TV show or movie, they're realistic people with maybe just turned up a notch. And that's how veterans are, I think. I think because we've had to live through, whether you deployed or not, because there's plenty who didn't deploy, but you still lived through just very different sort of a lifestyle than your regular American.
Yeah.
And so I think that really helped me in terms of shaping realistic characters and realistic emotional responses to supernatural things. Like my book is paranormal. There's all sorts of mythology and there's a little bit of time travel in there. They got a little bit of everything in my book. These are all things that obviously are outside of reality, but the reactions to them, I like to think I wrote fairly realistically.
Yeah. You mentioned time. I know you mentioned mythology, but you single out time in a lot of your descriptions about your book and other things. You mentioned time travel just now. To what extent do you talk about time in your book? And again, we're talking about No Rest for the Wicked, author Kat Anderson. What exactly do you do with time in your book other than just travel in it? Because I'm a physics guy, so I always like to see where people go with where they go with time, because it's a very interesting. And if you ask somebody to define time, it's very hard. It's very hard to define it. How do you conceptualize it?
So this book is meant to be the first in a series. So let me preface with that. So in this book, the time aspect of it is kind of more just introduced. So there isn't, it's not as fantastic as like the Time Machine or anything like that. But really what made me interested in having time, because time is almost its own character in my series.
Okay.
Is I think outside of just time travel, which is kind of the paranormal, supernatural aspect of the writing, I think time is one of those concepts that elicits a reaction from people. Mm-hmm. And so, I hadn't really thought of it much throughout most of my life. I was, young and vibrant. And even when I was in the service, and I deployed to some scary locations and had some close calls, I was always very good at kind of compartmentalizing. And, the finality of your life versus how time continues didn't really click with me. But it was later, after retirement, my dad had gotten diagnosed with Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia.
Oh.
And so, talking to him about it after he got his Parkinson's diagnosis, and he said, it's a weird thing to be, and it was before like the symptoms were real bad, but they were popping up. And he's like, it's a strange thing to move around the world knowing something is inside of you that's going to kill you someday.
Yeah.
And it was just I was like, gosh, that's such a profound and scary thing to think. And then when he got the dementia, and he would have days where he didn't know who I was, or he thought he was much younger, and the fear that I would see on his face started to really affect me, obviously, because I'm his daughter.
Sure.
But there's a long history in my family of dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that. And so I started thinking like, gosh, I'd rather have gotten blown to bits than get dementia. Like, I hope I don't, because you don't just lose your mind, you lose time, like literal time. And I think for me, time is such a scary thing because you don't have infinite time. And then to be able to kind of weave it into my storyline, it's its own, without being a physical person, like a physical villain, it's its own villain. if that makes sense.
Yes.
If that helps. I don't want to give away too much.
Of course not. No. but you've done something with time that sounds a little different. So I think that's kind of what I was trying to establish. As far as the mythology, is there, set the book aside for a minute. Is there some story of mythology that you find interesting or inspired you in some way?
I think it's really interesting how, the myths in general throughout history and throughout different cultures, you can find the same myth everywhere. Might have different names, might have slightly different, settings, but, there's tons of, whether you've got even just looking at like the Romans and the Greeks and and the Egyptians, they all kind of have the same sort of mythology, just different names and a little bit of different artistry. In this particular, for what I write, I've always, part of me, if I could have lived another life, I'd have been an archaeologist.
Oh, wow.
I think artifacts are really interesting. I think, again, I'm a millennial, so I grew up with Indiana Jones and all those cool things. And so, it's not really any one particular mythology that I enjoy more than any others. But I think, when I watch history shows or I have a friend who's an archaeologist and they talk about things that they find and you can learn a lot about it. But I'm always like, my mind is always like, what if we're wrong? Like we were there, like it'd be fascinating to know, like if you could only, for lack of a better way, go in a time machine and find out like really what what is this? And so that really kind of inspires the series as a whole, as each book has an artifact that can do something.
Yeah.
And is loosely tied to some form of mythology.
Sure. About time travel, a lot of people, I don't know that it gets discussed enough, but there's actually a practical way that you can look back at time, not that you can participate in it. But when we look at a star or when we look at a planet that's very far away, that's outside of our solar system, we're seeing it as it existed some time ago, depending on how far away it was. And I always thought it would be a good idea, an interesting story, an idea for a story to write something where, we found a way to find reflective light that left the Earth and we could see the Earth as someone who is seeing it, 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago, you could look down at the Battle of Waterloo or whatever. And I always thought it'd be interesting if you could do that and find out that our impression of history was wrong. Something about a major incident.
We were so wrong.
That isn't where that happened at all. So anyway, I always thought that was, an interesting concept, something to think about. What makes this book, and again, we're talking about No Rest for the Wicked. Well, let me ask you about the title first. That's a phrase that's been around a long time. No rest for the wicked. When something bad happens to somebody, they always just say, well, there you go. No rest for the wicked. Where did that title come from? Why did you apply it to this book?
I would love to say that I had some sort of like incredible creative reason behind it.
Yeah.
But honestly, and I don't even know exactly the song that I had in my head, but that lyric is in it and I could not get it out of my brain.
Okay.
And so I would hum it when I was first outlining this story. I didn't even have like names yet for characters. I was just kind of had this like, I want to have this kind of like hoity-toity family and I want it to be in Las Vegas and I want there to be this private investigator who's kind of rough and tumbly, but he's also, he's very smart. And I want him to have a friend who's a bail bondsman and kind of shady. And I just kept humming this same lyric over and over again. And once I had kind of the story outlined, it really worked with my villains. I don't want to get too far into it, but it just kind of fit really well. And then I thought, my Las Vegas, just like time is kind of its own character.
Yeah.
Las Vegas is very much
Oh, sure.
its own character in the story. And, it's, New York City is the city that never sleeps, but I mean, so is Las Vegas. Las Vegas is always open. It's always on. The lights are on. And there's plenty of wicked things that happen in Las Vegas and have throughout time. I mean, it's a very easy connection. Mm-hmm. And so, it was just a random song lyric that stuck in my head and I could not get it out. And then by the time I got it all, my story outline all done, I was like, what? Mm-hmm. Kind of feel like, why not? Let's try it out.
Awesome.
And my publisher liked it. So I got to keep it.
It's a title that people recognize. I mean, because of the fact that it is woven into so many other things. So that's good. One thing I'll ask you about, and I have this discussion every so often about science fiction, in that my personal view is the audience, if you look at the science fiction movies, for example, that have endured the most, you're asking the audience to believe one thing, not 10. Okay, I think there's limits to how much you can expect an audience to suspend their disbelief. For example, Alien. There's a bad alien on the ship and all the humans got to fight it. Easy to understand. Okay.
Love it. Classic. Hate the TV show, but love the original movies.
Yeah. Terminator. Okay. You got a good one. You got a bad one. Easy to understand. Okay.
Yep.
When you start getting into, I'm being chased by this monster from the future, and I went around the corner and I met myself 5 minutes ago, how I looked 5 minutes ago, and now I got to fight with who I really am. And you started getting into all that. Pretty soon it loses its form. You can take one step, one big step, one premise, and then the audience will accept it. And you talk about balancing realism with fictional aspects. So how do you walk that tightrope?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I actually am a very, science fiction would not be back when all I did was read books. Science fiction was probably one of the last types of books I would pick up because I needed to be accessible to me. I need to not have to get a separate science degree to understand the story, right? Same thing with with movies and TV shows. It's got and fantasy, the genre of fantasy is the same for me. If I have to memorize a whole other fake language and all of that to follow the story, you've lost me.
Yeah.
And so with what I write, there's definitely some science fiction elements to it. But at its core, it's really a detective story. Mm-hmm. And so, my main character is he's a guy. He's a private investigator, licensed PI. There's nothing particularly all that special about him or the way that he investigates. He just happens to get these cases that have some sort of real issue. The case that he ends up getting involved in this book is a missing persons case. And there's a woman who is missing and he needs to find her. And she's a real person and there's real issues. There's drug use. There's all sorts of, there's regular old murder in the book. But there's a little bit of the paranormal in there. And so, because that's, I thought, I think that would be interesting, especially in Las Vegas, to have, a little bit of ritualistic, strange things happening. But at the core, it's just a detective book. And the things that happen, most of the things that happen in the book are things that would happen in any detective book.
Okay, sure.
And could happen in any case. There's just a little bit of a taste of an undercurrent of the supernatural. But how my main character, Max West, goes about investigating it is how any investigator would. And so I think that's how I balance it. Hopefully I balance it very well. But it's what kept me interested in the story. Yeah. Because I really, for me, I'm not one to pick up a science fiction book unless, somebody I really trust tells me yeah, I think you're going to like this. And honestly, the Max West, his world was built out of frustration. After we retired, my husband and I, when we were in the service, we didn't really have a whole lot of time to watch what's on TV or, we're working 10, 12, 14-hour days. Especially near the end, I worked almost most weekends. And so at retirement, we're we're going to catch up on all of the new stuff. And we just hated it. And even reading, when I was in the service, especially near the end, most of the time I read leadership books because that's what you're supposed to read.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I tried to get back into fiction, I was like, I can't stand any of these books. They move too slow, or there's too much cultural signaling stuff that I don't want. And so we started watching a lot of throwback type TV shows like X-Files. And I had picked up Robert B. Parker books again that I really liked. And he wrote the Spencer for Hire type detective series. So, and we started watching the show. It had Robert Urich in it.
Sure.
It's on Tubi. Check it out. It's so great. 3 seasons. It's so corny, but I loved it because it's this private investigator. I loved the books. It was a private investigator from Boston who was like a boxer and also fought in the war somehow at the same time. Doesn't make any sense, but you can buy it because you're trying to get kind of this image of this guy and his best friend Hawk, and Boston itself is its own kind of character. And I got to thinking, like, my husband and I talked, I'm like, gosh, like if I could just get like Spencer for Hire merged with X-Files, I think that would be a really interesting story. And that's really how he was built. I liked the gritty, real detective type stuff with a little bit of the weird in there.
Awesome. Talking to Kat Anderson, the book is called No Rest for the Wicked. I got to ask you about, obviously the veteran part of you is well understood. And, we just got past Memorial Day, and my dad, he died many, many years ago. But one of the first things he said was make sure I get a flag on Memorial Day. His brother was killed in combat. And I think the, most reasonable people, except, the real wackos, really appreciate the service and the dedication that it takes to do that. I think that's well respected. And it's probably well understood. The part of you that I think a lot of people may not fit into this is political commentator. Political comment. I'm actually very intrigued by that because we do a lot of that here. We do a lot of bloviating here. And I was kind of curious, do you have any interest in doing that again? Or how was that experience for you? First of all, did you like it?
I loved it. And like I said, it wasn't really, I didn't go out to try to do it. I just, I retired and I was fully retired, so I could voice my political opinion and publicly. And so I was like, well, I need to kind of practice that, especially if I want to run for office someday. I need to get comfortable with articulating my views, and I need to get comfortable with people telling me they don't like them. And then when, I got asked to do it, I just did a couple guest columns for the Political Insider, and it was thrilling. I loved it. And then they, had me on full time for a couple of years, and I really did enjoy it. I would be interested in doing it again. I actually almost enjoyed, I loved when people would respond, whether it would be on social media or on the website, or even people who would write to our editor to say I really liked this or whatever. But it was almost the people that didn't like me that I loved the most. Because at least they read it. It struck a nerve. So you read it, at least you exposed yourself to something that maybe you wouldn't normally, and it made you think a little bit.
Yeah.
But it would have to be under the right circumstances. I was really lucky, with the editor that I had at the time. He never, I was never forced to write about anything I didn't believe in. It was a conservative leaning outlet. I would argue I am conservative leaning, but not on everything.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of the vibe now anyway. I think a lot of people on the right kind of have a little, everybody's kind of a couple different shades of red, and the same thing on the left. You have different shades of blue. And so I would say I was probably a lighter shade of red than a lot of their readers. But I think that's why they also liked me, because there'd be something different. And so, people generally with the stuff they hate for whatever reason, they love to consume it. So, okay. I would do it again, but it would be very difficult for me if I had to write for somebody who said, you have to say this. Well, if I don't believe it, I don't want to do that.
Would you be interested in possibly doing any like political commentary on podcasts?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would 100% be interested in that. I loved it. I mean, this is my first podcast in a few years, and I was so happy that when you reached out, I was like, oh, yay.
Oh, good.
I used to do them quite a bit when I was with the Political Insider, and I loved it. I think it's a really great outlet for people to get different ideas and to hear different things from different people. So, and sometimes people that aren't, like on mainstream television, you're just going to hear from the same people all the time. And so this allows people to hear from people who aren't just on Fox News or CNN or MSNBC. Right?
Yeah. Well, the fact is that podcasts played a very important role in the last election cycle. And you're dealing with cable TV right now, which is the lowest it's ever been. And it doesn't matter whether you like Fox versus CNN or any of those. They're all in the basement. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about all of them combined don't do what the biggest podcasters do now.
Yeah.
And you're talking about it. And here again, nothing wrong with age, but you're talking the demographics for cable news is north of 70. Mm-hmm. And that's the older side of the baby boomers. And quite frankly, that's why the baby boomers are very hard to reach these days, because they get all their information from television. They get all of it. Yeah. They don't, there's no Substack. There's no nothing. Okay. And, they're only listening to Wolf Blitzer or whoever.
Yeah.
And so, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's very one-dimensional. Very one-dimensional. So
I was gonna say, I grew up on Wolf Blitzer during the Gulf War. Like, I remember watching him on CNN. Was like, that was the only game in town.
Yes.
So I had my little map out, finding all the places in Iraq when I was young.
And I think one of the things that if you study media, one of the interesting things you can look at is how the wheels came off, particularly after the 2016 election, when somebody decided it was a good idea to get partisan. I think that's really, and they got, and we were talking about conspiracies. They reported on some stuff that really didn't happen, but it was the truth because it was on the news, and all the people that are on the internet are nuts, but it turned out to be the other way around.
Yeah.
So yes, a lot of interesting things to talk to you about. Talking to Kat Anderson, No Rest for the Wicked, the name of the book. I have the website as catandersonwrites.com. Do you have a social media, a Substack? I know you have a Substack. Do you want to direct people to that?
Well, for the book, definitely catandersonwrites.com. And my pre-order links for my book just went live today. So you can get to the Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart from my website, or anywhere you like to get books. Feel free to go out there and pre-order my book. And then on social media, my handle is pretty much Kat Anderson Writes on all of them. So you can find me anywhere on there. I do have my little Substack. It is mostly political commentary, which is fairly easy to find under my name. And that one, I kind of had started it just because I was like, well, this stuff still matters to me. When I was a kid, I loved writing, but I also loved American government. I had a rare, great teacher when I was in high school that I had for advanced American government. And he just made me fall in love with it. And then when I was young, we had gone out to DC on a trip, and I was just in awe of it. I was like, I gotta work here. And I love American history. And I thought, well, I'm going to do this fiction writing, and probably nobody's going to vote for me, or, cause I'm not super right. And I'm certainly not super left. Mm-hmm. But I don't hate everything that sometimes comes out of the left.
Sure.
And I don't hate everything that comes out from the right. But I thought, well, I'm still going to write about some of the things that matter to me, that I think, as I would talk to my friends who are all different shades of politics, we all kind of agree on most things, actually, especially things that affect every day. Especially home stuff, when it comes to parenting and kids and safety and privacy. Most of us, I think most Americans kind of feel the same about a lot of that stuff. Sure. And I think if more people talked about it, then maybe there'd be more of that out in the ether.
Yes.
As opposed to some of the crazy stuff.
Yes. Kat, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Kat Anderson is who we're talking with. No rest for the wicked. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I'd love to come on again to talk about anything you want. We could talk about education. We could talk about politics. We could talk about writing. I'd love to come on whenever. I'm
going to take you up on that. We're going to talk in just a minute. Thank you very much for listening to our podcast today. My name is Billy Dees. Kind of like my social media home is still X, which was at one time Twitter. The trending aspect of X, the breaking news aspect of X, it's so vibrant in real time. It's just really great for podcasting. So that's still kind of like where I lean, although it has changed. And one of the things I've done to balance that change is I have gone to Substack as well. Now I'm brand new there, brand new. But you know, I'm getting my feet wet in Substack. It has some of the elements of old blogging and has some of the elements of the old Twitter. So I kind of like that. As far as the podcast is concerned, you can find the podcast anywhere. We've been on all the major podcast platforms for over 10 years, and we're real easy to find the Billy Dees podcast wherever you find podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you again very, very soon. I'm Billy Dees and host of the self-titled podcast, The Billy Dees Podcast. We are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast featuring authors and creators talking about their craft, advocates for community issues, and myself and an array of co-hosts discussing current events. There's no partisan ranting and raving going on here, just great content. You can find The Billy Dees Podcast on your favorite platform and on Twitter at Billy Dees. Thank you, and I hope you listen in.